Alright, and welcome to another kind of creepy story. This one's a pretty old story. Okay. So, this dude, he's driving along one evening, and it's starting to get rainy out. And the further he goes along, the more violent the storm gets. I mean, it's just, whoa. And it's out of nowhere. I mean, he's had the radio on, and nobody said anything on the radio about a storm coming through. And suddenly he sees something coming up behind him on the road. And he can't believe his eyes. It's a horse and carriage. And I mean, he's just kind of freaked, and the thing pulls up right alongside him. I mean, he's driving along. I mean, it's pouring down rain. I mean, he's creeping along because of the rain. And this dude just kind of charges up right next to him and then kind of pulls the horses in and starts shouting at the car. So the dude kind of rolls down his window so he can see out a little bit. And, I mean, it's a dude, horse and carriage. I mean, he can see that there's a kid sitting next to him on the seat of the carriage. And, I mean, it's just a guy, but, I mean, he's dressed in old-fashioned clothing. It's in the middle of this rainstorm. And he's shouting at the guy in the car, saying, "How can I get to?" And he names a town. We'll go with, doesn't matter what the name of the town is. It happens all over the place. And the guy's kind of freaky and tells him how to get to that town. And then the man in the carriage just shakes his head violently and says, "No," and he goes off in completely the opposite direction. In fact, if you've told him, the man in the car has told him that the town is straight ahead, he will turn the carriage around and go the opposite direction. Completely opposite. If you tell him that it's off that way, that way, he'll go that way at the next possible opportunity. He always goes exactly the opposite to whatever you tell him. Or in this case, the guy in the car tells him. And this is just a weird experience, You're like, the guy in the car is thinking, what the fuck just happened? And what's even weirder is that as soon as the dude takes off and disappears, the storm stops. I mean, it's still raining a little bit, but I mean, the real violent storm is stopped. And I mean, the guy in the car is just like, what happened? This is just weird. So, I mean, he drives on to get to the next town, and, he's a traveling salesman, or he's a businessman that's had to travel between a couple of different places. Didn't want to use a plane because it wasn't that far. So he's stopping in this town overnight to rest up. He's going to get a hotel room, rest up, have a drink in the bar, relax. Especially after this bizarro experience he's just had. What the hell? So he goes in, and he's kind of wet, but the town isn't. That's what's really weird, is that he's, his car is soaking wet. He got soaked from water pouring in the window from this guy yelling at him. But, he gets to the town, and it's like nothing happened. No storm at all. So he walks in, and the hotel clerk is kind of looking at how wet he is, just kind of eyeballing him, and checks him in, no biggie. And he decides, I'm going to get a drink at the bar, or a few, before I go up to my room, because I really need it. And he goes, and he sits at the bar, and the bartender notices how wet he is, and like, you just met up with a stormbringer, didn't you? And the guy's like, what? What are you talking about? And the bartender just kind of looked at, you never heard of the stormbringer? You aren't really from around here, are you? He says, oh, I don't live that far away. He tells him where what's the town or city he lives in. Like, the bartender's like, and you've never heard of the stormbringer? Dude's like, no. Should I have? Bartender just kind of goes, well, you did just meet him. So the dude says, okay, fine. I should know what the Stormbringer is, but I've never heard of this thing before, but I've met him, so who the fuck is the guy? The bartender just kind of goes, you aren't going to believe it. Even though you just met the guy, you aren't going to believe the story. But, okay, here we go. So, talking about 150 years ago, 150, varies. This guy Isaiah was trying to get home late one night and got caught in a storm. And this dude Isaiah, I mean, he's just one of those guys. He always knew best. Nothing anybody else told him was ever right. He knew better than everyone. Never went to church. Was even heard to curse God's name quite often. So, as the story goes, he's traveling along this road. It's middle of this huge thunderstorm. And he stops right outside an old man's, a house. And starts shouting at this house, trying to get somebody to wake up. And finally somebody comes to the door and yells out at him, "Damn you, Isaiah, what do you think you're doing? Waking up this household right in the middle of the night in this god-awful weather." Or whatever they would have said. And he's shouting and berating them, cursing at them, saying, "I've gotten turned around on the road. Which way to where he lives?" Which is kind of weird because the two guys know each other, and he's not that far away from his own house, which kind of disturbs the old man a little bit. He's kind of, what's wrong with him? So he says, you just need to keep on going. And Isaiah shakes his head, violently curses at him, and shouts up at the sky some profanities directed at the storm and God, and he's determined to get home that night. And the old man's saying, "No, this storm is getting even worse now. Come inside and wait it out, and then you can head home after it's blown up past." And then just Isaiah knows best. He's gonna make it home that night, before, in spite of the storm, in spite of God. And he drives off, and he's never seen again. Or at least that's the way it seems. He certainly never made it home. But from time to time after that, people would be out on the road, and suddenly a violent storm would just kind of blow up on them out of nowhere. And right after that storm hit, within minutes, up comes Isaiah and his horse and carriage and his young son. And it always goes the same way. He demands to know the way to get to his hometown, where he's trying to get to. And no matter what he's told, he always goes the wrong way. So he's stuck. Thanks to his vile treatment of other people, the profanities directed at God, God is never going to let him get home. He's permanently stuck out in that storm, trying to get home. And he roams all over the land, trying to find his way home, never listening to directions, always going the wrong way, and always bringing that storm right along behind him. Or in front of him, actually. And that's the story of the Stormbringer. I could have told that one better, I'm sure. I'm sorry if I kind of messed it up at times. I actually came across this story in a book of ghostly legends. So this one is one that is not made up necessarily. It is an actual folkloric ghost story. And I can't remember the specifics. I made up the Isaiah, so if you go looking for this and find that I'm wrong on a whole bunch of shit, I'm sorry, I'm doing it from memory. Basically, it's a land version of the Flying Dutchman story. The Flying Dutchman is the captain of the ship, is a heathen of a man and curses God in the middle of the storm, and now he's cursed, and his ship is of skeletal crewmen is cursed to forever roam the oceans, trying to find their way home, and they never will. I'm an atheist, so of course I don't buy into the whole cursed by God bullshit. But it's still a good kind of not necessarily creepy, but I mean it's a pretty good ghost story. Especially you get it down real well and tell it around a campfire or something, or better yet on a stormy night. Maybe have somebody waiting to knock on the door or something. Good times. Yeah, all in all, I mean, it's a pretty good story. I mean, you have those elements in there that are very believable, because it's very easy to believe. I mean, we've all met those people that no matter what they're, no matter how rational you try to be with them, they're completely assholes. They know best, and they're going to do what they're going to do no matter what anybody says to them. We've all met those people. So that part makes it really believable, of a guy who is so stubborn that he would rather drive for eternity in a raging storm than actually listen to advice. That's believable, and it helps make it a really good ghost story. It's not real high on creepy factor, though. It's a pretty good ghost story. So tell me what you think in the comments. If you have your own little stories you'd like to tell, you can come to my website, acidbathproductions.biz. I do have boards for both paranormal things that you've experienced and creepypasta type stories, as well as a whole section on Halloween, which is where I'll link to in the description, is my Halloween area for creepy stuff, scary, horror related stuff. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to keep up with what I'm doing. Share it with your friends, embed it on your website, or do all that sort of things if you want to. I always appreciate that sort of thing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.